Hello and welcome to the Blue Amber Saga. For this video, I'm going to share my life story in a nutshell. So, let's get started. So, I'm Ben, and I was born and diagnosed with high functioning autism when I was 3. Although, before all of this, I was actually considered to have been deaf, and it was only until I was noticed to be pointing towards the sky, and then 2 minutes later, a plane started flying past. Did anyone realise that I actually had super sensitive hearing? And so, although I did have this, then I was known for having lots of ear infections when I was little, and as a result, had grommets to help with these. I didn't actually speak till I was 5, and so one of the main ways I communicated was through a form of sign language, which also actually helped with my speaking development at the time. I was part of a special education needs school until I was 9 before I moved into mainstream. But actually, during that time, then when I was 7, I was diagnosed with a rare blood condition called ITP, which basically meant I had a lack of platelets, and so as a result, I bruised really easily and would bleed out quite easily as well. And so I really loved the SEND school that I was at, and my mainstream primary school support was really good at the time as well. Although I did struggle quite a lot with the culture change in the environment and just discovering that life wasn't really what it seemed to have been compared to previously. And so, for anyone who's seen Life on Mars, the series, then it felt very much like that. And having to try to learn how to fit in and work out what was going on in a really confusing world. And so partly as a result of that, then I became a Christian when I was 11 after facing depression. And life afterwards didn't actually really improve. It was a really big challenge. And it was to the point where in secondary school, I nearly moved back into SEN education. Um, However, though, interestingly, things got better. Um, and um, and part of that was being able to spend some more of my lessons on the school farm, which the school just happened to have had, and being part of the community there. But also, I was moved into classes which some of my best friends were in compared to previously, which also made things better. But also, it's quite interesting, kind of from a point of interest of um, I feel like this stance might be more apparent because it was around that time when the 2010 Equality Act came in, which gave kind of further protection for those with disabilities. So I just thought I mentioned that as an interesting kind of side note. And so around that kind of point, then I met a really famous ethnobotanist called James Wong, and also I met Alan Titchmarsh, who inspired me to pursue a career um, in horticulture and to get a degree, which um, kind of unknowingly it was really seemed unlikely that I would even get that far. Um, but you'll find out that actually it turned out for the better in the end. And so I did extremely well in my GCSEs, which actually led to me going to a Catholic college, which I was able to thrive in for my A levels. And as part of that, ended up spending a lot of time helping in chaplaincy and running events and running about with that, which was really great fun. And so following this, I discovered that you could actually do a degree in agriculture because it turned out there wasn't actually very many horticultural degrees at the time. And so I discovered there was a degree at Reading after talking to a friend who was studying there. And I explored the campus and went to Reading, and I just felt that was the place that I wanted to go and was being called to. And so I went to Reading, and I was really thriving with the opportunities of kind of independence and having support from mentors when I needed it. And also, I really settled in really well and became really active in the Christian Union society there, which was an absolute massive blessing. And during kind of my second year, I was helping to run a Bible study group as well, and it was all looking really, really good. And then, as part of my year or my university thing, I had a year out to go on placement, of which I did that, and it turned out to be a really massive struggle. And I really struggled with the kind of working life, which partly because of from a communication breakdown and just company culture clashes, and so it all kind of had a bit of a negative effect in the end. So I ended up leaving that particular placement early, and so I returned home, and eventually found another placement, um, which was a lot better. Although I did find it quite hard coming back to home because of trying to adjust to home life where most of my peers at the time were still away at university. And so it was a very different kind of dynamic. And so I returned to Reading for my final year, of which was really exciting. Um, but no, it was quite hard in the end because a lot of the kind of the peer group and the social networks I had from the previous years um, weren't there anymore, and so there's a bit of a struggle with that. But also from my placement year, it led to questions of okay, what am I doing in terms of with what I'm looking for in a career, and so it led to a to me wanting to do a career change in that. And then eventually I finished my degree, which was really cool. And then as part of that, so I thought, I probably ought to try and get a new hobby now that I'm back home. And so, what better hobby to go and pick than to do sword fighting? And so, of which, yeah, it was a really great hobby to take. And within the kind of first 3 weeks, then the person I was being taught by asked if I would like to be his assistant for the club that he was running as a kind of a part-time job. And so I've been doing that ever since. And so around that time, also maybe 6 months later, actually, then COVID-19 hit and the lockdowns occurred. However, though, during this time, then an opportunity arose to work for my uncle selling plants, um, which it was really interesting because at the time it developed and led to helping to build a exotic butterfly house. And as part of my job in the end, ended up actually managing the daily running of this house as well as all those who came to visit. And then through the kind of work I was doing, then there was a company called Legacy International Group, of which were interviewing people with disabilities about just work and what it is like living with a disability. Which, after having an interview with them for a podcast, then actually I got offered a role of doing an IT apprenticeship focused around the kind of media and video making side, kind of similar to like with all these videos that I'm making now. And so I took them up on the offer of that, of which also resulted in learning about digital accessibility on the whole. And so yes, I did that for about 6 months. Um, but then sadly, I was made redundant. Um, however, though, within the space of a couple of weeks, and I had actually received an offer to work as an intern at a company called Site Savers, doing digital fundraising. Of which that was a massive blessing to work there, and again to be involved with the kind of accessibility bits, but also trying to make a difference in the world through that. And so now I've finished that role, and that brings me up to life, up to the here and now. And so this is my life story in a nutshell. And so thank you for listening. And if you have any questions or areas you'd like to hear more about, then I would love to answer any of those and talk about that more. This is the Blue Amber Saga.